Please keep this confidential. Also, part of this may be speculation. Not all of it may be true. Still interested. Neither the victims nor the school filed a complaint, so there's no preliminary report. Basically, the police hadn't intervened in this matter. So all of these details are just what I heard from those involved, meaning that it's not credible, or not that credible. You said there were victims. Didn't Rena just break all the windows? No. Rena Ryugu had attacked 3 boys using a metal bat. Two of them made it out with only bruises, but the other had been injured so badly that one of his eyes was permanently damaged. Wouldn't that be considered assault? Shouldn't the police have arrested her? For whatever reason, the victim never pressed charges. There was no report to the police, so they were just beaten with a bat and suffered significant injuries. Normally, there would be a criminal investigation. But why didn't they press charges? I tried asking the 3 male victims for their side of the story, but they were all reluctant. It's hard to say, but they were all afraid. Even after she had transferred schools. Luishi-san, can you summarize it starting from the beginning? Rena hit people while she broke the windows? Or was it that she started breaking windows after she got bored of hitting people? They sounded familiar, but the meanings were drastically different. Or similar. On an undisclosed date, Rena Ryugu was conversing with 3 male students, close friends of hers, near the pool storage shed. Who were those 3? I can't reveal their names, but they were close to Rena Ryugu. It seems they were a group of friends. She was the lone girl in their group. It wasn't that strange that the 4 of them were together. So what happened? I don't know the reason why. She took the baseball team's bat that was in the pool storage shed and beat the 3 of them down. Okay. Okay. There were no witnesses. Okay. I understand. Kind of. This is an accident pieced together by the information that was given at the time of the incident. That's why, one day after school, Rena and 3 male students were at the pool shed talking together. They weren't seeking help, rather, they usually met up there. It appears it became a heated discussion. At that time, Rena underwent a change. The change was so abrupt that the 3 of them didn't comprehend what was happening. Then, taking the metal bat, she attacked her friends, one after the other. Leaving her friends covered in blood and with gashes on their head, she made her way towards the school building. And she broke the glass windows one after the other. A few minutes later, a teacher appeared on scene and subdued her. What was this change Rena underwent? What matches up in the statements from the 3 was a sudden change. The point that there was a transformation. Transformation? I could also recall Rena's transformation. I'd seen that change many times before, so it was different from the usual Rena that I couldn't help but believe it was someone else who looked like Rena. The transformation they were talking about, had it happened before? No, there was nothing like that. As far as I could find out in her medical history and past, there was nothing like that. Does that happen often, where people suddenly change like Rena did? Of course it does. There are plenty of psychological phenomena that cause something like that. Then you're saying there was a dormant element in Rena that caused the transformation? Cannot say that for certain. But according to the statements of her friends, it's hard to believe she had such a side to her. Kind, caring, adorable. Even before she transferred here, she was probably pretty popular in school like she was now. That girl transforming suddenly and assaulting them with the bat. Who could imagine such a thing? Nobody could have seen it coming. I myself sometimes believed that I was mistaken for thinking that was Rena, even now. Then, what happened after that? There was a hospital right across from the school, so the three of them were carried in and treated quickly. What about Rena? What about the police? Why wasn't there a criminal investigation? You see, the police can't get involved unless they are called. Even though one was badly injured with permanent damage? Why didn't they file charges? That was what caught my attention as well. Either some threat or pressure was placed on them, or they had a reason they couldn't file charges even if they wanted to. We're talking about you after all. Of course, you looked into it, didn't you? Yeah, but I told you at the beginning, didn't I? That the victims were all very reluctant to talk. They didn't want to touch on the matter, or rather, they didn't want to be involved. Reluctant to talk. Didn't want to touch it. Didn't want to be involved. Resembled the villagers here and Oyashiro-sama's curse. Did the teacher at the school tell you anything? The school is a hallowed ground. You could say they tend to keep their scandals under wraps. I didn't have a search warrant, so I had to tread lightly, you see. Then there was no comment from the school? No. They denied the incident even happened. It's just 3 male students were carried in for blunt force trauma that day. That's all there was in the hospital records. The victims didn't speak. The school denied it happened. Then you don't know anything at all? Yeah. I knew nothing other than the incident itself had taken place. The victims also wished this incident to be kept from the public, so if you and I both forget about it, Mibara-san, then this incident will probably just fade away. For a brief period, we sat in silence. At first glance, it looked like a simple assault case. That was just the tip of the iceberg. The depths were obscured by rolling waves, sinking quietly into the void, as if it never existed to begin with. After that, she was suspended from the school. During that time, she underwent psychiatric counseling. Did you hear anything from that doctor? Again, they were very professional in regards to their ethics, or at least very tight-lipped. Nothing even after you showed them your badge? I was told to get a warrant. The badge itself has no legally binding authority after all. Then how did you know that Rena confessed that it was Oyashiro-sama who did it? There was a nurse I asked in that department. She agreed to help me just from showing her my badge. And what did she say? Turns out the nurse hadn't heard everything. Apparently all she remembered was that she overheard from inside the room. The nurse said that at the time Rena Ryugu was very calm and mild-mannered. Dude, what if that nurse is the girl who died? Oh my god. It was more like she was confessing her sins at a church more than a counseling session. She spoke with her mother there for some of it, I'm guessing that is. But partway through, her mother was asked to leave, so it became a private counseling session between just the doctor and Rena for a while. The part with Oyashiro-sama, when did that pop up? Partway through. She screamed the name suddenly. It startled the nurse, and that's why she started listening in. It was Oyashiro-sama. Rena suddenly shouted that. I had no idea what was said before that, so I had no idea what the meaning behind it could have been. The doctor calmly and collectedly asked Rena to have a seat. What is this Oyashiro-sama you speak of? Gently, ever so gently. The fundamentals of counseling were believing what you were told. Whoever abandons Hinamizawa will be hunted down by Oyashiro-sama. And they've finally gotten to me. That's the town you lived in before you moved here, isn't that right, Ryugu-san? I didn't want to move, but I had to because of my mom and my dad's circumstances. We had to. But Oyashiro-sama wouldn't allow it. Ryugu-san must have lots of friends in Hinamizawa. Even now, you must be missing them dearly, don't you think? Want to go back. Back to Hinamizawa. No, it's not that I want to go back, I have to go back. I should have gone back much sooner. But now it's too late. Oyashiro-sama has come. Oyashiro-sama is the name of the god in Hinamizawa, isn't that right? Everyone knows it's Hinamizawa's guardian deity. And if you ever try abandoning Hinamizawa by leaving, you'll incur his wrath. You had moved quite a while ago, didn't you? Then it was just now that this god arrived. Is that what you're saying? You might not believe me, but Oyashiro-sama exists. That nurse was then asked by another nurse to do something and left the room. That was all she remembered. That it was Oyashiro-sama's doing, right? I do believe that there is that kind of superstition in Hinamizawa, that if you leave the village, then you would incur Oyashiro-sama's wrath. You should be familiar with this part, Maibara-san. I knew very well that those scorned by the village incurred. They hindered the dam construction project. They cursed the construction foreman to his death. Then following year, Satoko's parents, supporters, and leading advocates for the dam were cursed to death. But this was the first time I've heard of the curse incurred by leaving the village. This is my first time hearing that. I can understand outside threats being cursed by the village, but why also villagers who leave? Normally people who leave villages aren't supposed to be cursed, right? I know it's a bit strange to say it, but I could see it as a rule that the people who come in are the ones who would be cursed. Far from Jupiter, far from his thunder. Curses weren't something to chase after people that leave, were they? Oishi-san pondered for a bit on the other end of the receiver and then began speaking again. Well, if I told you long ago when Hinamizawa was called Onagafuchi, didn't I? I recalled hearing that long ago Hinamizawa was feared and respected as a village of ogres. The villagers at the foot of the mountains worshipped the ogres. So Onagafuchi was hallowed ground that you could never enter. It came to be said that if you entered carelessly, you were cursed by Oyashiro-sama. Those who set foot in Onagafuchi, in other words, Hinamizawa, would be cursed. I could understand that. I know that, but for also leaving to be no good? That's also the ogres, you see. They were being strictly watched by Oyashiro-sama, so they would not enter into our world. In other words, Oyashiro-sama probably restricted interaction between Onagafuchi and the rest of the world. See. I finally understood what sort of thing Oyashiro-sama was. So basically, Oyashiro-sama is more like a warden than a protectorate deity, I guess? Trying to keep this place isolated from the rest of the world. I guess that's how it would seem. I'm sorry I didn't know very much myself, or I don't know very much myself. This is mostly what was passed on to me from my grandmother. I could understand it a bit better if it was like that. Those who came to Hinamizawa would be cursed, and those who tried to leave would also be cursed. So, because Rena originally lived in Hinamizawa and moved away, she fulfilled the requirements for being cursed. So that means, because Rena moved away against its wishes, she was cursed by Oyashiro-sama? Is that what it adds up to? In short, that seems to be what it points to, I guess. As a matter of fact, soon afterwards, they did move back to Hinamizawa after all. Those who abandoned Hinamizawa and left were cursed. But then why only Rena? Shouldn't Rena's parents also have been guilty of the same transgression by moving away and have been cursed? Also, in this day and age in Japan, shouldn't there be a lot of people coming and going? If every single one of them was cursed, then it would be insane. But in reality, it wasn't that big of a deal at all. At most, there would be one person dying and one person disappearing on the day of the Watanagashi. I don't like saying at most, though. Well, anyways, there's still a lot I don't know. Even if it was Oyashiro-sama's curse, it doesn't add up to why her classmates, the victims who were beaten with a metal bat, wouldn't press charges. You don't think that the victims were cowering because they believed in the terrible curse that had befallen them, do you? Of course I didn't want to believe it. Aren't I still under Rena's axe right now? More importantly, I just realized something else. There was another bizarre connection that Rena made between Oyashiro-sama's curse and the metal bats. Satoshi fell victim to Oyashiro-sama's curse and went missing. I had recently learned that Satoshi had also become infatuated with the metal bat right before he disappeared, just like me. Rena as well. She was affected by Oyashiro-sama's curse. She confessed that much to the doctor. And the weapon she had used at the time of the horrendous act was, again, metal bat. Finally me. I'd encountered various things that were inexplicable, and I was holding on to a metal bat. I was shocked when I learned that Satoshi did the same thing. Couldn't be that the same thing had happened, or had the same thing happen to Rena? But there was one critical difference between her and Satoshi's case. Being Satoshi went missing after falling victim to the curse, but Rena was still here. Both of them had fallen victim to Oyashiro-sama's curse, yet they were met with different endings. And finally me. I couldn't call it a coincidence anymore. Rena, Satoshi, and finally me. Could it be that I was really under Oyashiro-sama's curse right now? Now, more importantly than that, what should I do now? Satoshi had been demoned away, vanishing without a trace. Rena was fine. Fine? Rena had undergone a change. I could only believe that there was something that wasn't Rena residing within her. And here right now, it was standing before me. Rena, please tell me, what will happen to me? Rena stood imposingly, not answering. Satoshi disappeared. But Rena didn't disappear. So what will happen to me? I'd never heard such an unpleasant laugh before. It had become akin to the sound of her breathing. It was no longer a voice or an expression of feeling. Don't worry, I'll save you. Rena took one step forward, still holding the axe high above her head. Now then, one step closer. Rena's face spread out to fill my vision. Speak. One step closer. Rena's nose was close enough to touch mine and was still pushing closer. There's something you want to say, isn't there? I'll listen. I'll save you, okay? Speak, okay? Speak, okay? I slumped down, landing squarely on my butt. It wasn't for some pathetic reason. It was all I could do to get as far away from Rena. I had the gut feeling that I couldn't let her laughter end. Because when that laughing ended, the moment I picked up on that feeling, my body moved by instinct. I sprang to my feet so fast I couldn't believe it and pushed Rena away with both my hands. Rena was as light as a feather. Thrown about by the unbalanced weight of the axe, she was sent backwards as if she had been carried off by the wind. After confirming that out of the corner of my eye, I dashed off at full speed. It was the perfect picture of fleeing like a greased pig. Get away from Rena. Run away. Survive. I couldn't think of anything other than this. While I was running, I remembered holding on to the bat the entire time. Such a worthless weapon. I couldn't believe I had forgotten about this weapon at such an important time. I sped even farther down the winding path. I didn't even feel myself gasping for breath or my legs getting heavy. My body understood it as well. If I didn't run away from here, I wouldn't live. I could hear the laughter of that... Oh God. I could hear the laughter of that simulacrum of Rena coming behind me. It rang through the trees and in my head as it slowly chiseled away at my sanity. The grove of the trees thinned out, my field of vision suddenly expanding. Where was this? For a moment I was bewildered by the scenery I felt like I knew but I couldn't quite remember. I quickly realized. It's the damn same. The fact that I had dashed madly and ended up in a place this grave gave me a bad feeling, like I was following someone's scripted plot. I had a good view of my surroundings, but I didn't see a single soul here. This was a terrible spot for someone on the run, but there was no better place for an attacker. My heart was already on the verge of bursting. The muscles in my legs were screaming, but I didn't care. If I stopped here, then they might not be able to scream for much longer. Even still, I glanced back, looking for an excuse to rest. Rena wasn't there. Instead, I saw two villagers walking around. I don't know if that's a sigh of relief. I breathed a sigh of relief that it wasn't Rena, but a third party, except the voice inside me rang the alarm once again. Wait. Villagers walking around weren't suspicious in and of themselves, but it bothered me. They both wore rough-looking clothes. Empty-handed, they definitely gave the impression that they were just out for a walk. But at this time of day, two adults wandering around without a purpose was enough to raise questions. But more than anything else, those eyes. They weren't chit-chatting while walking. They were both silent, heading forward, looking in my direction. Was I at the end of my rope and finally started imagining things? I should run away. Probably the best choice. If they weren't involved, I'd lose them easily by running. If they were part of the group after me, then they would come running after me. Either way, unless I hurried up, Brenna would catch up with me. That's right. I was going to run. Deciding that, the moment I began to turn tail, both of them rushed towards me as if they knew exactly what I was thinking. Somewhere inside me, I had jumped to the conclusion that Brenna was the only thing I needed to be afraid of. I made the assumption that I didn't need to fear anything else. But right now, I realize how blatantly wrong I was. Boom, dude. Village was totally a part of it. Suddenly, the story Oishi-san told me about the demons all leaving the village to hunt prey floated through the back of my mind. I could tell they were both coming for me without even turning around because of their frenetic footsteps. It was frightening. She was being unable to shake Rena off as she slowly closed in on me, but this didn't even compare. Being pursued with such violent ferocity, this straightforward horror was unparalleled. One of the pursuer's arms grazed my shoulder. No, now there wasn't just their frenzied footsteps, but also the distinct sound of their breathing that I could hear. No, I could practically feel them breathing on me. They were already right behind me. Calm down, Keiichi Maebara. Still running at full tilt, I felt the surrounding area go still. No, it felt like time itself had stopped. I turned back slightly in that frozen world, realizing how close my pursuers had gotten to me. I wouldn't win against the legs of an adult. In less than the time it would take to blink twice, when this frozen time began moving again, they'd be right on top of me. On top of me, and then... Don't think about that, Keiichi. First, realize that you won't be able to shake them off like this. If the fact that you can't get away was a given, then you need to make a decision. Go with the right leg or the left. You need to decide which one. Let's go with the left. At that moment, I decided the temporal singularity burst into pieces. Right. Left. I swung the bat in a wide arc with my arm. Using that inertia, I stopped and suddenly spun. What? The two of them were clearly startled, momentarily losing sight of me with both their outstretched arms ready to grab me, instead grasped at empty space. Wait. Man on the right, I applaud him for being able to figure it out, spun around to the spot I shouldn't have been. Faced me in astonishment, but it was too late. I didn't even need to swing my bat. All I needed to do was extend my arms as I turned around. It was by no means a heavy blow, but it seemed like enough power to knock him off his feet. But just knocking him down wasn't enough to scare him away. He got back up in no time. Both of them took a fighting stance and were ready to face me. This made me certain that these weren't just two people out for a walk. They were clearly after me. It felt much easier than dealing with Rena. By not recognizing their faces, not knowing them, it made things easier. I smiled wryly on the inside. What do you want with me? Next one is going to be right in your face, you bastard. It's fine if it was just a bluff. By barking out at them, I was able to fire myself up. They didn't respond. They spread out to either side of me with unbelievably calm expressions on their faces. One of them would grab onto my bat and the other one would hold me down. Was that their plan? Taking both of them at once would be impossible. Hot sweat poured out from every pore in my body. Then I would just have to settle it with the first move. I'd step in and strike the first one down. Narrowing my target down to the man on the right who had already been knocked down before, I stepped in and swung with all my might. There was no way for an unarmed person to guard against it. It would cause immense damage. If they blocked it with their arm, their bone would snap like a twig. If they turned their back to it, then it was possible that the blow would travel all the way to their vital organs. It looked like he was aware of this. He pushed farther through the kill zone between us and delivered a fist right to my gut. Not good. With this distance in position and in this state, there was no way for me to dodge it. The world flipped upside down. I understood that I was being tossed around like a rag doll. I landed on the soft earth without a sound, feeling the grainy soil pressed against my face. It didn't hurt at all. At the moment I thought that, I suddenly felt pain coming from the abrasions on my skin, as well as the contents of my stomach being forced upwards, flooding my mouth with a bitter sensation. I knew very well that I didn't have time to relish this experience. I stood up as quickly as I could, but at that moment the other man was already barreling towards me. Being able to comprehend calmly that I simply couldn't dodge it made it all the more upsetting. After plowing into my stomach full force once again, my assailant twisted around behind me and locked his thick arm around my neck. My throat felt like it was being crushed by his immense strength. I couldn't even contemplate that I was being strangled or that I was about to go unconscious. My vision had simply darkened and went silent as a whining noise began to play deep inside my mind. It took everything I had to keep myself from blacking out. That's a freaking catchphrase, dude. While this was happening, the other man was more than likely standing in front of me. I wasn't able to open my eyes, but I could feel that he was there. There was nothing I could do now. Unable to shake his arm off me, I couldn't run. I couldn't fight back. Dire straits. I couldn't even come up with a phrase that adequately described my situation. Okay. Interesting. So, huh. So I was strangled. Knew them well. Is this my room? Normally there wouldn't be anyone in my room besides me, but their presence made me spring wide awake. When I did that, pain shot throughout my entire body. Are we really pulling that? Feeling alright? I think you better just lie down for a bit. I don't know what's going on. Why was Rena in my room? Blood began to surge through my muscles and capillaries. But Rena's smile belonged to the Rena I knew well. I knew I shouldn't let myself feel this way, but relaxed thinking that this version of Rena was safe. Why am I... Don't you remember? After losing consciousness, nothing at all. I'm crazy. Wow. My body had become more lethargic than I could have imagined. I guess that would be expected after the outcome after exerting everything I had back there. I tried to at least clear my head, but I just couldn't shake the sluggish feeling out of my mind. I called the doctor. He should be here soon. I think you better just lie down until then. I wasn't injured seriously enough to merit calling a doctor. Knowing that someone impartial was coming was slightly reassuring. Why am I here? Sure, I was at the dam site. I want to know. What happened? When I got there, Keiichi-kun was already passed out. That's why I'm the one who wants to know. I was attacked by two weirdos. As I talked about it, I finally remembered what happened the night right before I passed out. Recalling the memory and the terror that went along with it caused the fogginess around my head to clear right up. Let's forget about those two for now. I didn't expect Rena to be nursing me. I thought Rena was trying to kill me. She would have had the perfect chance while I was unconscious. Not only did she not kill me, she had nursed me back to health. Amazing you could drag me all the way back here. Wasn't I heavy? Looking at Rena's delicate frame, it was hard to believe that she had not only gotten me back home, but even dragged me all the way up to the second floor. Did she have some help? This is a dream? Do you remember Keiichi-kun? Rena appeared a bit surprised, but still kept her smile. I only propped you up on my shoulder. Said you could walk on your own and that you were fine. Don't you remember? I didn't remember. My memory was fuzzy after the point I lost consciousness. What about those two? Huh? When you got there, Rena, the ones with me? Or rather, those two guys? There wasn't anyone. She said it bluntly. The way she stated it felt slightly unpleasant. I was just too timid at that time. I might have been able to force some answers out of Rena, but if I did that, this kind of Rena might transform into the scary Rena who I didn't know. Fearing that, I didn't press any further. Thinking about it, it was the obvious choice. If both of those men were there, I don't think Rena would have even stood a chance. I couldn't find a way to explain it unless I assumed she brought me here after those two were already gone. Rena was still smiling. Her eyes sparkled warmly. Yet, I felt like I was hallucinating when I saw something. Something akin to a shadow slowly creeping across her face. That small omen sent shivers down my spine. While Rena was still Rena, I needed to make contact. I needed to contact Oishi-san. Rena stopped me when I tried to get out of bed. He said it would aggravate my wounds, so I should sleep. I'd like to go to the bathroom, though? Sorry. Rena couldn't say anything else. While Rena stayed in the room, I quickly... Oh, Jesus Christ. Quickly went outstairs to get the phone receiver in the living room. When I approached the front door, the doorbell rang. Ding dong. Must have been the doctor that Rena had called. It was strange for a patient to welcome in the doctor who was making a house call, but it would be incredibly reassuring to have him here for the considerable time it would take Oishi. Oh, don't answer the door right now. I carelessly opened the door with that simple assumption and almost regretted it instantly. Neon? Oh, you look just fine. I heard you collapse, so I came to check up on you. How did you know I collapsed? I heard from Rena over the phone. Do I need any other reason than that? I understood why she would call the doctor. Why Mion too? Rena was descending the stairs behind me. Rena, doesn't Kei-chan look pretty alright? Gee, she made me worry for nothing. That's true. Maybe I worried for nothing as well. They both began laughing. It appeared to be cheerful laughter, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was a darkness looming over them. Whoa, what's up with the shoe rack? How did it get like this? shoe rack that I'd smashed to pieces had been like that since yesterday. I fell, you see. The bat I was holding on to slammed into it. This is what happens when you swing around something you're not used to handling. Kept the fact that it was none of her business to myself. But leaving it like this will really startle your parents when they get home. I'll fix it up for you later. Come on, Keiichi-chan. The terminally ill need their rest. Come. Back in bed. Both of them urged me up the stairs. I had no chance to call Oishi-san. Was pushed into my bed. Okay. Explain it to me, game. As it was the first time that Mion had been in my room, she began searching around it intently. She fiddled around with my room and was scolded by Rena. You can imagine how it went. It was uncomfortable having my room poked around, but the conversation was so benign that it was heartwarming. During the innocent conversation, Mion said something as though it was perfectly ordinary. Rena, you called the manager. Yep. Right after I called Michan. He said he'd be right over. Manager. Out of place word gave me a bad feeling. Rena called the doctor. Called Mion. After that, she called the manager? Who was this manager? Since Rena and Mion's conversation was so peaceful, it only felt slightly odd. What are you two talking about? Who's this manager? Oh, didn't you know, Kei-chan? We mean the manager when we manager. Like the director of a movie or foreman of a construction site. I dug through all my memories for a manager who might have business with me. Only one thing came to mind. What Rena had just said. The construction site foreman. Very first victim of the incident. The dismemberment at the construction site. The foreman? But that was strange. He was supposed to be dead. There's no way they would call him. I don't understand what you guys are talking about. What does the manager have to do with me? He said he was coming. Did you mean to my house? I asked one obvious question after another. But all the two of them did was smile coolly at each other. There was a huge difference to how the two of them appeared and how my suspicions were playing out. Slowly, I felt discomfort and panic welling up inside me. Couldn't understand what Rena and Mion were talking about. Hey, Chan, you've gotten into baseball lately, haven't you? Pretty sure the manager will be happy to hear that. So who is this manager? Laughing. Manager is the manager. So who is this manager? Rena and Mion looked at each other and laughed haughtily. The disturbing cackle unpleasantly resounded around me. A laugh long enough to be unsettling ended abruptly. Oh yeah. We should finish up before the manager comes. You remember, don't you, Kei-chan? Her face was laughing, but Mion's eyes told a different story. Remember? Remember what? Ichikun. Had he forgotten, I wonder? About the penalty? About the penalty? Did you really forget? The homework with the mochi? Forgot about that homework, didn't you? Certainly did have that homework. But I had thrown away the rest of the mochi after I had found that sewing needle. So I wasn't able to answer which one Rena made. Penalty for that? Why not? No doubt the question was written all over my face. Their answer to my question was that dry laughter. I could no longer make heads or tails of anything. I began to think this entire day was somehow insane. Strange. Incomprehensible. Being chased by Rena. Attacked by strange men. Penalty Mion and Rena were talking about. What were these two laughing at? It didn't take long for me to realize I had been dragged into an abnormal situation. Who were these two? Who were these people? Who were these doppelgangers of Rena and Mion? Rena had gotten behind me at some point. What the crap? Why was she pinning my arms behind my back? What are you doing? Don't move. This is your penalty. My body was already very sluggish, and Rena pinning my arms made it that much harder to move. I seriously tried to struggle, but she wouldn't even budge. My panic began to well up, and I realized this was well beyond the realm of jokes and pleasantries. This freakishly monstrous strength, it would have been impossible for the Rena I knew. Then these thin, frail arms grasped me firmly. Whose arms were they? Hey-chan, no struggling. Club rules. There are no exceptions. Can't fight against the penalty. Mion. No, the thing that looked like Mion spoke to me like how Mion would speak to me. But I was certain that this was not Mion. Someone who wasn't Mion. Someone who was just pretending to be Mion. Need to finish this up before manager comes. Mion fished her pockets and pulled out something bizarre. I could tell just by looking, but for such a thing to be in her pocket, my mind wouldn't accept it. Was it that? It was a small syringe. A small, clear syringe, like what a doctor would use when you went to him when you were sick. Brenda held me even tighter. And I could hear the clattering laughter that no longer sounded like laughter blaring into my ear. That eerie laughter. It wasn't something that the Rena I knew could ever produce from her own throat. This thing that was pretending to be Rena. Was this their real laugh? Unable to defend myself, the syringe Mion was holding drew closer. As the needle tip, and that needle tip was waved in front of my face countless times. Don't worry, don't worry. It won't hurt. It won't hurt. What are you planning on doing? What kind of sick joke is this? What are you saying, Kei-chan? You know exactly what's going on, don't you? About what? I don't understand any of this at all. I know you know. No use playing the fool this late in the game. Stop talking nonsense and try and confuse me. Going to have done to you what happened to Tomitaki-san. Same as Tomitaki-san? I didn't really understand what she meant. What did that have to do with this syringe? I understand. You're playing dumb, Keiichi-kun. You should have realized it by now. Rena whispering into my ears, laughing as if to admonish me. But even the way she spoke was repulsive beyond compare. Playing dumb? Me? About what? What do you mean the same as Tomitaki-san? Everyone thought at first that it was a hit and run. Except when the officer got closer to check if he was still alive, he soon noticed it wasn't a normal situation. His throat was scratched out. From a knife or something? No. Nails. Nails? His fingernails? With those gouged through? That's right. Tomitaki-san had clawed out his own throat and his own nails and died. There was no way someone could die like that. So then for that to happen, we thought drugs were to blame, but nothing of the nature was detected. That's right. The police didn't find any drugs in Tomitaki-san's system. The police told me they didn't find any drugs in Tomitaki-san's body. Gweh, gweh, gweh. Two of them laughed together with that sickening laughter. Of course they'd laugh. Assume that such a medicine didn't exist just because the police didn't know about it was completely foolish. Meaning that the drug that caused Tomitaki-san to die in such a bizarre manner did exist? If Mion injected this into me, then that would probably be all the proof that I needed. That would basically mean I'd end up the same as Tomitaki-san. Become hysterical, scratching out my own throat in the last moments, and then die. For such an outrageous drug to exist. For Mion to be holding it. That I was about to be injected with it. At that moment, I did not feel there was any need whatsoever to question it. What kind of idiot, when he's trying to dodge a ball flying straight for his face, has time to think of a reason why it's flying at him? Just give up. Alrighty then? Leon's actions lacked any gravitas, as it made, and that made it even more terrifying. There was none of the ceremony like when someone is sentenced to death. There was no hesitation at all, as if she were brushing her teeth. Leon reached out with one hand and grabbed onto my chest. Felt like electricity had run through the back of my head. The entire world had gone dark. Did I stand up too fast? Or did someone hit me really hard in the back of the head? Having lost my sense of balance, I was assaulted by a wave of dizziness. What the fuck is happening? Is that midway? Oh, damn. That's midway, isn't it? Dude, that's midway. Alright. Well, I don't know what's going on. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and end it here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Um, I... Okay, so I've confirmed pretty much everything. We're wrapping it up, obviously. Like, this is the last. They've answered a lot of my questions. They've denied a lot of my questions or whatever. We're wrapping this chapter up. Basically, there's a drug that exists that disappears from the body. That's what was used in Tomitaki-san. I think it's kind of cheap that they said that there was no drugs involved before. But there is drugs involved before. Because I just ruled out drugs, like, completely from the equation after they were like, oh, there's no drugs, so there must be magic. But no, there's drugs involved. I thought for a second when they put me in my room with Rena over me, I thought that the bat like made me crazy or something. But then I had been experiencing the stuff before that had happened. Like before I grabbed the bat. The bat was kind of like after I realized shit was happening. So it can't be the bat. It's definitely just Rena, Mion, and all them being fucking murderous assholes. Now, I don't know what's going to happen here. Obviously, I'm not dead yet, so that's interesting. I'm not clawing at my own throat yet. But I could. I imagine... I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. I think that Rena was once normal, but now she's kind of like taken over by this demon. Same thing with Mion. Like Rika and Satoko have been non-existent. Like zero. I thought their involvement would be much higher in this whole shits. But then again, there's a whole bunch of other chapters of this. So I don't know if things are necessarily going to wrap up here. You know, I think we're going to probably have like a cliffhanger maybe. And then on to the next chapter, or maybe it'll end. And then we'll have like another. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. Interesting shit. Why didn't Rena kill me right there? I think it's because they wanted to make it seem like I killed myself. And I think that's probably what it was. Is like if Rena. But see, then why would Rena try to kill me at the forest? There's a lot of like unanswered questions that. I mean, there's a lot of questions that are answered. Like the town isn't on it. That Mion and Rena are terrible people, and that I'm glad that I talked bad to them and like, good. Thank God Mion was crying. Like, I don't give a shit. Like if you're after my life, like you're like the lowest priority to cheer up. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about. I think after on this next episode, we're gonna end it. It's gonna be over. These episodes are running a lot longer than normal, so I apologize for that, but things are getting really intense, and I want to just keep recording until I get to a point, like a halfway point, and the halfway point didn't come till like way late. So it was interesting though. I hope you guys had time to watch all of it. I don't know how long the next one's going to be, considering it's going to be the last episode. But we'll see. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this, more importantly, if you want to let me know anything that I read wrong, freaking insult, I see you down there. Go ahead and leave a comment down below. Leave a like, subscribe. You guys know the deal. And I hope to see you guys in the next episode, whenever that may be. Peace out, you guys.